In this video, we're going to talk about how you can calculate numbers on rental properties the effective way and the proper way. Hey, what's going on, guys? It's Sam Kwok, one of the Kwok brothers, and today we're back to share how we like to calculate numbers on rental properties. Whether we're doing multifamily or single family, there are some differences, but I'm going to give you guys examples of both on how you can start calculating numbers on rental properties. So one of the first things that we want to do on rentals is get an idea of what the market rent is. Now, market rent is the average rent that is being charged in that given area. Now, this may change per block by block. This may change by neighborhoods. This may change just because the school is right next to the apartment or the house. So it's really important that you understand how to properly calculate the market rent, right? The rental comps as far as what you can charge for rent. Now, I met people where they're in an area where the average rent for a 3-bedroom, 2-bath is $1,200, but they were charging $1,600. So it wasn't a mystery as to why they couldn't rent it for 3 months until they finally had to come down to $1,200 to be able to rent it out to a tenant. So you might be asking, where do I get the market rent? Right? How do we determine what the market rent is? So one of the first sites that I can introduce you, it's called rentometer.com, and I'll write it down. rentometer.com. So rentometer.com. Now, I'm not getting paid to tell you guys this. I use this tool myself to get an idea of what the average market rent is going to be. Now, a more effective way is having a property manager or a lease agent give you what's called the rental comps. And it's similar to the comps that you would get when you're doing a fix and flip or getting an assessment of what the property value is. So doing a rental comp is basically compare a like property, right? Property that looks and has the similar features of the property that you're analyzing to see what they've rented for in your given area. So with the rentometer.com, it at least gives you more of a quick and dirty number as far as what the market rent is going to be. Now, let's say you went through the process of figuring out what the market rent is. We're going to go ahead and say, for this example, I'm going to demonstrate a scenario. This is a single family house. It's a 3-bedroom, 2-bath house that can be rented for $1,200. Okay. There we go. So with that $1,200 a month, that's a 3-bedroom, 2-bath rent. And again, we are absolutely sure that this property can be rented for $1,200 because we know that similar 3-bedroom, 2-bath in the area have been rented for $1,200, right? And a lot of times there's a lot of newbie mistakes, a lot of amateur mistakes that are done where people think, well, I think I might be able to slide by with having $25 more when everyone else is charging $1,200. Right? Well, you either have to justify that extra $25 of rental charge, or you're gonna have to come down to what everyone's renting, because if you try to take one for the team and try to bring up the rent, it's not gonna work really well. You're gonna have to wait a little more, and you're not gonna get a lot of applicants wanting to apply for your rental. So you wanna make sure that you're within the average, right? You don't wanna try to reinvent the wheel. So with that $1,200, one of the first things that I look at is, what does it cost to maintain the property? Now, this all comes to a question: how old is the property? When was the last time there was any major renovation to the property? What type of area, right? What are the demographics like? How do the tenants treat the properties in that area? So that matters a lot, because we have to determine what the ongoing maintenance cost is going to be. Typically, I like to say 10% for maintenance, But if you're in an area where it needs a lot of maintenance, or the property has some major issues where you have to constantly repair it, then you may have to bump the maintenance up to 15% to be able to kind of forecast some of those issues that are going to come along. So generally, we're just going to call it at 10%, and then 10% of $1,200 obviously is going to be $120. Okay, that's maintenance. That's rent. And this is what we like to call gross rent. Not because it's nasty or gross, that's the accounting financial term for it. So we start with the gross rent, $1,200 minus $120 for the maintenance. And that's to make sure to cover for any breaking toilets, faucet leaks, whatever, right? Now, you may say, well, my property is perfect. There's no problem. There's no repairs. Well, you still have to make sure that you put some in the reserves. So in case, let's say, an air conditioning goes down, you got the money to cover it, right? You don't want to have to come out of pocket or dig into your credit card to be able to do that. You want to build in the reserve to make sure that there isn't any sort of large item cost that you're faced with. The next thing that I cover is the management. Now, here's the argument for this, and this is where I argue with a lot of people with management, because people tell me, well, Sam, I manage my own property, therefore I don't have to put the 10% in, or 8%, whatever the management cost is going to be in your area. But my argument is, well, if you have to manage the property yourself, don't you still have to spend that time, right? Where you could have spent that time at work, you could have spent that time to go look for other deals, you could have spent that time spending with your family, right? Because that's why we bought rental properties, is we want to have that freedom to be able to spend that time with our family. But if you're spending all that time on managing, shouldn't you at least be compensated for it, right? So either way, you're paying for management, whether you're doing it with time or you're doing it with money and paying other manager to do it. So my argument is always put management costs in there, because you want to make sure that you're compensating for your own time or compensating for someone else's time to manage your property. So typically I would factor in 10% for management as well. Okay. I'm not going to spell well today, apparently. So bear with me here, guys. Manage. There we go. And we're going to say that's $120 a month. Okay. Another thing is that we want to factor in something called vacancy. Now, vacancy is another forecasting expense where we're going to anticipate that out of an entire year, we're going to expect that 1 month will be vacant. Now, you may have tenants that stay in your property for multiple years. In that case, I would still set it aside, because let's say a tenant lives in your property for 7 or 8 years, which is fairly a long time, and within those seven or 8 years, you may not have the opportunity to go in there and do some major renovation or remodeling, or the carpet may have to be replaced, and so on. Now, on top of the maintenance cost, we need to do some major capital improvements, renovation to improve the property. So there's dual purpose to this vacancy. Vacancy covers not only the cost of the property being vacant while you're advertising it, but in another sense, I want to make sure that my vacancy reserve is being built up, even if the tenant doesn't leave 1 month out of the year. So I'm going to factor in 8% for vacancy. That is the industry average. I'm not just making this up, right? You can go less, you can go more. If you're in an area where there's a lot of frequent turnover, then you may want to calculate 10% for vacancy. If you're in an area where people want to stay, they're not leaving, even then I'll probably stick with 8%, but I've seen people go all the way down to 5%, but I'm going to stick with 8 just because I prefer to be conservative with my numbers. So with 8%, let me see what the math is. I want to be exact, I want to be accurate. So 1,200 times 0.8 is $96 a month. There we go. And that's what we call vacancy. And after maintenance, management, vacancy, we also want to factor in taxes and insurance. Taxes being property taxes, okay, and your insurance. Now, property taxes and insurance, I don't really have a fixed number for this. This is why running this number makes it a little bit more difficult So your property taxes, you can usually find out through your county tax assessor / tax treasurer office. So those information are public. They're free. They're easy to access. You just need to search the county's name and put tax treasury / tax assessor and Google it, and you should be able to find a website whereby all you have to do is enter in the address, and you should be able to find that information about the property tax on a given property. That's also applied to multifamily. So we're looking at single family, but also applies to multifamily. Now, with the insurance, that's another big question mark, because usually insurance rates adjust depending on the location. Is there a fire alarm? What is the overall condition of the building? So there's a lot of factors that go into insurance underwriting, and I'm not an insurance agent to tell you this, but the best way and quick and dirty way, if you have some time, is to call your preferred insurance agent and just have them give you a quick estimate. And of course, you want to be considerate of the insurance agent's time. Please don't do that when you're practicing, because you don't want to be bugging your insurance agents when they have other things to do. But ballpark, if we're dealing with single family, 3-bedroom, 2-bath, 1,200 square feet, I would elect and say you're going to be paying about $70 to $80 a month. So let me just do the math here. 900 divided by 12. Yeah, about $75 a month for insurance. And I'm going to go ahead and say, I'm going to go use the Illinois average. I live in Illinois, where our property taxes are up the wazoo. So if this works for Illinois, I'm sure it's going to work for you. But Illinois, let's say the property taxes averaging, I'm going to say, let's see, 2,500 minus, or divided by 12. 2,500 divided by 12, that gives me about $208 a month in property taxes, which seems reasonable. I don't think I'm far too stretched. So let's go ahead and subtract all that number. So we're going to start at gross rent, $1,200, and if you guys got a calculator with me, you guys can follow with me here. So $1,200 minus 120 minus another 120 for management, $96 for vacancy, and subtract $75 for insurance and $208 for the taxes. So what we get is a net, and I'll write that further down here so that you guys aren't, well, I think you guys should still be able to see that. So 581, excuse me, is your net operating income. So this is a number after you have subtracted all your expenses. Now, typically, I would prefer that my numbers to my net operating income to be anywhere between 45 to 50% of the gross rent. So it looks like we hit the spot here. Let me see if yeah. So we're at 48% expense to, well, that will be net income ratio. So I'm gonna go and do the opposite. 581. Minus 1,200 should give us, or 1,200 minus 581 should give us 619 divided by 1,200. So we have an expense to income ratio of 51%. So this number I would actually be comfortable with. If it went down any more to, like, say 500, I would start to get a little worried, and I would figure out, where in my item here have I gotten too expensive? And usually the number one suspect is the property taxes. Usually the property taxes are really high, whereas everything else should be okay. Now with the 581, I'm comfortable with that. I like that number. It fits in my 45 to 55% ratio that I'm looking for. So with that 581, if you're using leverage, meaning if you are using financing, whether it's a mortgage or home equity line of credit, whatever financing that you use, of course my brother and I love using owner financing. You have to also now subtract this number 581 to whatever the debt service is. Debt service is the proper term, right, to describe the mortgage payment. So technically, your mortgage is not an expense. While the interest, you can claim it as an expense on your tax returns and your official financial statement. But in looking at an analysis of a rental property, you're gonna see the mortgage payment or some sort of debt payment as what we like to call debt service. So 581, subtracting your debt service, okay, minus whatever debt service is. So we're gonna take a step back and we're gonna go ahead and just give this property a value of saying $100,000. So with a $100,000 purchase price, let's say, and that's what this property's worth, okay, we're gonna amortize this baby at 25 years. So I'm gonna pull out an amortization calculator, and an amortization calculator should give you an idea what your monthly payment is going to be, assuming that you're buying this property for $100,000. If you put 20% down using a traditional mortgage. So I'm gonna go, and by the way, I know you guys aren't seeing my screen. I'm just pulling up a regular amortization calculator. So I'm gonna go ahead and say this is a home purchase, 100,000. Well, the loan amount will be 80,000 because we're doing 20% down. And we're gonna say this is 30-year amortization at 5.5% rate. And we're looking at a monthly payment. So this is 20% down at 5.5% interest for 30 years. You're looking at $454 as far as your debt service, and this is your NOI. Your net cash flow, your cash flow is going to be, and I'll do the numbers for you guys, 581 minus 454 is going to be $127 a month. Okay? And that's cash flow. That's what we're after, right? The cash flow is what puts food on our table, right? Clothes on the kids' back, the roof over our head. It makes sure that we have gas in our car. That's what that's the number that we're going after. So in any mechanics, if you're trying to make this into a great deal, there are several control points that you're seeing here, right? So the control point A is what is the gross rent and how are we starting with that? The second control point is what are the property taxes, because property taxes can go up, can go down. Usually they go up in my state, Illinois. So you would imagine this is going to continue to go up. So one thing that people don't quite understand is if you do raise property taxes to pay for some sort of state expenditure, it will raise that because investors are looking to get this and ultimately getting to that. So control point A, control point B, control point C is what you are buying for. Obviously, you can't be buying a $250,000 house, right, doing the same terms and expecting that you're going to cash flow because you're going to go negative. So it's very important to understand those types of control points where your knowledge is going to come to the play and come to the table is your gross rent, your property taxes, how to get that information, as well as understanding the maintenance aspect, because if you buy a dirt cheap property, typically, and this is speaking in general, if you buy a dirt cheap property that needs a lot of work, this number is going to be way higher than what I'm anticipating. Third thing is that making sure your purchase price is sound and reasonable, that you're doing the right comps, you got the right after repair value, and that the term of the financing, right, is at a reasonable rate to where you have a fair debt service. Now be careful. Another thing I will mention, I'll use purple for this one. Be careful with the interest rate on financing. Because a lot of time, if you get a rental property, if you are trying to put financing on a rental property, the bank would try to offer you an adjustable rate. And if you guys understand what's going on in the current economics, is that the rates are going up. Meaning, if this turns into 6.5%, okay, let me see what that math looks like. If the rates go up as we're seeing, that if that goes to 6%, our cash flow is gonna go down, or 6.5%, I should say. So if the interest rate goes up by another 1%, you're at 6.5%. The debt service is gonna go up because you're gonna have to pay a higher rent. So the debt service is 506. I just did the math here. If we do that math of 581 minus 506, you're looking at only of $75 of cash flow, right? Which actually fills the tank on my car. So guys, understanding those control points things that you can control and you cannot control. We'll give you an idea of how to properly calculate the cash flow and the numbers of a rental property. That also will give you an idea where to invest, because you don't want to necessarily invest at the most expensive areas. You want to invest in areas where the purchase price, as well as the gross rent, as well as the property tax, they all work in a harmonious way where it's going to cash flow. And at the same time, pay attention to the financing, because that's what's going to ultimately control and kill or get you the cash flow that you want to have the lifestyle that you want to create. So guys, that's how I like to calculate numbers on single family. On a multifamily, it's generally the same. What will be different is that you're going to have additional expenses such as utilities, because if you, let's say, have a 24 unit rental property, there's going to be electricity that you have to pay for common areas. So common areas are like the hallways, right? The laundry room, the outside parking lot lights, right? You have to pay for that as a multifamily landlord. So you're going to have to put those utility costs, gas, electricity, water in some areas, factored in. So the numbers will work on multifamily because you have what's called economy of scale. You have lots of units and lots of cash flow to cover and absorb some of those costs. So with multifamily, single family, you're going to see similarities. With multifamily, you're going to see more expenses or line items of expenses due to utilities. You're going to have a larger landscaping bill because you're going to have to cut the grass. You're going to have snow plow bill if you live in areas that have a lot of snow, like here in Chicago. So anticipate that in multifamily. So guys, that's pretty much it from me with analyzing numbers. If you have any questions, go ahead and leave them down below in the comment section below. We're pretty good about answering any questions when it comes through our YouTube channel. So don't be afraid. I won't bite. I'll go ahead and answer your questions. But we do reserve the right not to answer any of your questions if it's anything that has to do with harassing or foul language, or it's inappropriate. Then yeah, we'll ignore that. But guys, if you have any questions, go ahead and ask below and we'll be able to help. And stick around, guys, because we're going to come up with more videos like this. And glad I can help you guys. So see you guys in the next video, and go ahead and make some money.
Well, hello there. You made it to the end of this video. Congratulations, and that probably means that you like our video and you love what we did. So be sure, if you want to get more information, more YouTube videos from us about real estate investing, be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel and hit the bell icon to make sure that you get notifications on our future videos about real estate investing.